Good morning. I'm not sure if my friend Holly has got her Wi-Fi up and working, so I'm going to go straight into my vlog. I didn't have all my usual glossy banners flying in and subtitles or headings along the bottom. That is why. But if it is, thank you, Holly, for getting your Wi-Fi working for me to get this video out. She moved house this week, bless her. So it's been a challenging week for her. The budget. Here I am on Friday morning. The budget was delivered on Wednesday. I sat and listened to all of it, as I'm sure lots of the country did. And what are my overall thoughts on it? Well, of course, it was the first budget to be delivered by a woman. Rachel Reeves faxed on that quite strongly, hoping she'd be a good role model for many young girls across the country, which I obviously support as a kind of a career woman myself. You never hear the expression a career man, do you? Anyway, don't get me started on that one. But of course, it was a budget about rebuilding Britain, as she said, and restoring economic credibility. So there was an awful lot of scene setting, which started to give me a sense of doom in the pit of my stomach about where this was going to go. Scene setting about the legacy that they had inherited from Conservatives, almost very driven from a Labour spin point, but looking at addressing this £20 billion black hole that she had found when she had taken over the finances. And indeed, the budget she announced she was going to raise additional 40 billion. So my heart was in my mouth a bit waiting for what was coming, because of course there have been so many rumours and musings about what the budget would deliver. And I have to say, personally, from my standpoint, as far as the property market goes, it could have been a lot worse. Yes, there were some nasty kickers in there, and I will talk about the impact I think that they will have, and also a real missed opportunity to address some areas. But I think generally for the property market, it's actually pretty standard, to be honest, against what we were hearing could happen. So, of course, what is going to be happening to the property market? Well, the biggie, of course, is around capital gains tax and stamp duty. Those are the two biggies. So stamp duty, a lots of calls actually to have a big reform on stamp duty. A sensation, a feeling in the country, there are a lot of people in the wrong size property. So older demographics who need to move on to free up these large homes for younger families looking to come up the property ladder. And if more of those bigger properties went to market, prices would reduce a little, which would enable that whole housing market cycle to kick on. But nothing done about that. She has held firm on the fact that they will not be extending the current higher rate of stamp duty allowances that there are for first-time buyers and second home or next steppers, movers after that, not buying a second home. I'll come to that in a minute. So she is going to return those to their normal levels at the end of February. And for someone buying in London, a property price over 600,000, that could result in an extra 15,000 stamp duty. So all that will happen there is that prices will be renegotiated in those bigger areas to compensate for that extra cost that buyers are having. That's always what happens. Ever a cost or something is delivered somewhere else has to pay for it ultimately. So yes, that's kind of like a shame that they're not being continued. And of course, an extra 2% stamp duty for anyone buying a second home. And that draws into question probably the biggest and worst affected area of this budget, which is the whole rental market and sphere. Anyone who watches my vlogs will know that I've been talking about this for a long time. You have to so carefully balance how you incentivize an investor to come into a market with trying to equally raise revenue for HMRC. And that extra 2% will certainly be a disincentive to anybody, any landlord looking to buy further rental homes. And all that is doing is pushing up those rental prices, because if there is less stock to meet demand, prices rise. So that, I think, is a real shame, actually, not going to be great for the private rental sector at all. Encouraging that she kept capital gains tax at its current levels on property. She raised it for sale of other assets such as shares, but for property has held it at 18% for a lower rate taxpayer and 24% for a higher. So good that that wasn't increased. That might mean that some landlords hold their stock thinking, well, I'm certainly not going to be buying anything else for a while, so I might as well just sit on this. Or they might look to dispose of that to take advantage before capital gains tax does potentially get looked at again by how it could be coming. Would have been a real kicker, I think, to deliver both increased stamp duty and increased capital gains tax in the same hit, because that would have absolutely had huge ramifications across the secondary private rental market, which this will anyway. It's been hit by so many changes lately: increased legislation, changes of mortgage interest relief, being able to offset that against your costs. So many changes. It's been a hard hit sector, and that's why rental prices are going up. So that was probably the biggest impact and the biggest shame, I think, on the budget, is what that will do, not addressing stamp duty and putting that higher kicker on for stamp duty. Of course, other things that she talked about: affordable housing, want to increase the budget going to that, slashing the right to buy scheme for council tenants to buy their own rental properties. I think that's a real shame. There'll be lots of council tenants who've been renting somewhere for quite a while and were planning to make that home their own more permanently and take advantage of the right to buy scheme. That's all gone as well. Of course, VAT on school fees, that will really impact, certainly in Tunbridge Wells. Here we have a grammar school system, and the rest of Kent, that will definitely affect property prices sitting in those particularly good secondary school and primary school catchments. Because if you do right at primary school, pass your Kent test, get rid of a secondary school fee. So that will definitely help. One of the big areas I was keen to look at is, of course, one of Labour's big manifesto promises was all around development of new houses, and encouraging to see that they're putting more budget aside again to really encourage and drive forward that initiative to build more homes. But ultimately, not enough detail really on what's going on with the whole planning side of things. That's where that will backlog that whole initiative. They do not sort out the planning red tape around getting these new homes built. It's going to go nowhere. So I think a real call for more detail around that. And the final area that I was quite intrigued to look at was a whole non-dom sector. Now, it doesn't really affect us here in Tunbridge Wells. Non-dom, so non-domiciled in this country. That basically means someone resides here, they count it as their country of residence, but they don't see it as their home country, their home birth country. And at the moment, we have a taxation loophole or system whereby they pay, if they're non-dommed, they don't pay all the taxes that would be due to someone who was fully domiciled, like myself. I count myself as British, that lives in this country. So they are looking to really reduce that down. Indeed, extra stamp duty on those really high value properties, that's snuck in as part of that whole initiative. Of that, you might not have seen that. But you need to be careful on that, because those big high value purchases generate around 25% of stamp duty receipts. And if they're making it less attractive for foreign investors or foreign individuals to come and live in those real super prime markets in London, you will generate less revenue from that. So that will be an interesting one to watch. But all in all, cruel in that the stamp duty kicked in the day after the budget, didn't it? No chance to try and get your deal through to avoid that extra 2%. But what are we seeing as a result of it? Well, the one thing any market hates is uncertainty. Our viewing diary for tomorrow looks absolutely manic. I've got 3 offers I think I'm going to be dealing with today, which is good. So yeah, basically it's just settled down some uncertainty. I don't think it was as bad as anybody thought. And here we go on again. We will see what it brings. We'll look with interest how the markets react to this, what happens on that whole building scheme, and the whole non-dom bit, and what happens with those investor landlords thinking of getting to the market. Those are the areas that I will be watching, plus of course school catchment areas, because of that on school fees. I'm going to end it there, let you enjoy your weekend if this does get out to you before the weekend, hopefully. Yeah, I'll bring you my usual update next week. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.